Welcome back to Your Italian Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hopkins, founder of Your Italian Passport, your source for all things Italian citizenship. On today's episode, we met with Liz Knight, American attorney in Rome and a longtime friend of mine, and we got into all sorts of interesting topics, whether it's taxation and working in Italy, healthcare and how to access it, putting your kids in school, all of those things. Hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Liz, welcome to Your Italian Podcast. I'm so excited about this episode and honestly, so relaxed about this episode, which is so nice to just feel like, okay, great. This is just chatting with a friend.
Anytime I can chat with you, I feel the same.
Right. I feel like, we could go on for 3 hours here, folks. We'll try not to, but that's, the way Liz and I are. So just I think we should tell the audience just how we know each other, I guess, to sort of explain who are you, why are you my guest, etc. So a little bit about Liz and a little bit about how we know each other. Liz Knight is an attorney, an American attorney living in Rome for many, many years, and has children in Italy, an Italian husband, etc. She's made the successful leap that all of us are still working on, or at least I'm still working on. And I came to be aware of her, about 13 years ago. Oh my gosh, where does the time go?
We think it was 2013. We could go back on the digital footprint.
It is. I think it's 2013, and I was at the Department of Justice and dreaming of being, I think, anyplace else, and Googled the term American attorney in Italy or American attorney in Rome, talking about myself, like how would maybe me get there? And this blog comes up called Rome If You Want To. Fabulously written, so fun of a read, written by who, the one and only Liz Knight. And I thought, yeah, I have to know this person. And so my stalking began, and I reached out to you, and I think I was going on a trip with my mom to Italy, and said, hey, you don't know me, but kind of, we're going to be friends. And I've since done that. No, previously, I had done that to another friend, still 2 lifelong friends. I highly recommend that. Just tell people that you're going to like. Just say, you don't know this, but we're going to be besties. It's going to work out. And either they'll run or you will be besties. One of those 2 things will happen. And so I reached out to you and said, you don't know me, but I'm coming to Italy. And would you possibly agree to meet with me? And if it makes you feel a little bit less scared, my 60-something-year-old mother will be with me. So don't worry. I'm not here to kill you. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, except I was not scared. I was also happy to meet your mom, but I had the same sensation. We had so much in common. I knew we would be friends also. And, that is how it happened. We met was it like Piazza Navona? I mean, something out of Roman Holiday,
Yes. We sat in Piazza Navona for like 4 hours eating ice cream.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I was walking away and I heard you say to your mom something like, that was so nice.
Yes, that sounds totally like me. So yes, that is something I would have totally said to her. Like, wasn't that great? Yeah, exactly. So welcome. I am so glad that you and I are able to do this. And so catch everybody up a little bit on what are you doing right now? Well, tell us about your life professionally, personally, etc. And then we'll get into how can we all be you.
Okay, well, for many years, I was / have been / am still a U.S. licensed attorney living here. I'm on a very extended maternity leave, imposed, desired long maternity leave after having my second son. I will go back and do something for sure, but at the moment I am free of deadlines and, nasty letters that I have to respond to from opposing counsel. I am negotiating with preschoolers and trying to settle differences between brothers that are very close in age, but I do not have to send out any bills.
So all of those same litigation skills are still in
all of
practice,
the
just
litigation
a
skills,
different
a lot
audience.
of the stress, a lot of the sleepless nights. I just don't have to file anything, and the pay is a lot worse. No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
it's a lot less
I
rewarding.
get paid in
Well, no.
kisses and snuggles and hugs and
Yes.
you know,
Yes, exactly.
sweetness.
Now, just
Uh,
so everybody knows,
yeah,
when you were working for an American firm.
correct. So I always worked remotely for an American firm that I had worked with previously in the traditional way, in person in an office. And this was before COVID, long before COVID. After COVID happened, I think everybody in the world realized that you could just work remotely for yourself, for your own, business that you start as a contractor, as an employee in some situations. But I did that before I knew anybody else was doing it. And my firm just understood that you could do almost everything remotely, even, mediations and some hearings and certainly depositions. And there was just so much of it that was on the phone. You can file things for anywhere. This is not probably, you tell me, a podcast about how to practice law remotely. So I'm getting into the weeds of like what you can do, the technology. But it was a really forward thinking experience at firm. I am eternally grateful that they trusted me to have the work ethic to make that happen and to work during U.S. hours, etc. If you are an attorney, with your own practice, work whatever hours you want. But I was working when my colleagues and when opposing counsel, etc., are in the office, and so that's the situation that I was happy to continue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you were paid in American dollars,
Mm-hmm.
and that was paid into a U.S. bank account.
Yes.
So
And then
go ahead. So I'm leading up to like, how does taxation work? If you make this leap and you are employed in the U.S., how does all of that work?
okay, so you declare all of your worldwide earnings. So, maybe you've got a client and, you with your Italian passport, maybe you've got a client in Canada or a client in, all your worldwide sourced income you declare on your Italian taxes if you're a resident here. If you're a resident here, and this makes perfect sense, you're using Italian infrastructure, if you call the police, an Italian police car comes, you're using the roads. So if you're a resident here, you pay taxes in Italy. So you have to declare all your worldwide income, no matter where the source is, no matter what currency it's in, you declare that on your Italian taxes. You must have an Italian accountant. It's called commercialista, and it's like more than an accountant. It's like a CPA. You must have that. There is no TurboTax. There's no Italian TurboTax. There's no Italian, free file dot whatever. You have to find one of those. Try to line one up before you get here, but otherwise line one up after you arrive. Word of mouth is how I got mine, and I love him. Word of mouth is probably where any of you will get yours as well. If you don't know anyone, like word of mouth from whom, there are great, Facebook pages for expats in your area, and this question comes up a lot, and you'll get a lot of suggestions, and you can go look that person up and see if you like their website, etc. So you provide him or her with all of your, if you have your 1099s, your whatever, provide him or her with those. He or she will tell you what you owe, and it gets put into a one-page form, unlike your American taxes, which is like 29 pages. It's one page, and he or she tells you what to pay, and you just pay it. So that's also, by the way, all your interest and dividends, etc. So you're going to pay a lot of taxes here.
In Italy, do you pay taxes once a year or throughout the year several times?
I have only paid once a year. Other people might pay multiple. No, it's not right. There is twice a year in the fall, but the times I've paid in the fall have been so little compared to what I end up paying in June. That's why I sort of forgot about it. It's not like 4 equal quarters. There's sort of like a little smaller sort of, what do they call it here? Like, I guess it's like an advance, like in the States, you're technically paying that quarter on what you think you're going to owe. And then if you've paid too much, then you get a refund. Anyway, so it's mostly once a year, but yeah, there's a little time. My commercial visa sends me an email in the fall and says you have to pay like a few hundred, and I don't question it. I just pay it. And then the big bill is in the summer. So it's in the summer. So it's June 30th. So in April 15th.
Okay, so June 30th is like our April 15th.
Yes. So what is that? So when it's April 15th time, you haven't paid your Italian taxes yet. So you need to get your extension. Expats get an automatic extension, but the automatic extension is only 2 months. That's June 15th. You still haven't paid. So you need to file and get that full extension till mid-October. So you'll get it. It's really easy. You go on TurboTax, or I use something called Tax Act. Whatever you use, you click on file an extension, you get it. No problem. So then now you've got
now why would you want to file the extension? Is that because you will owe less to the US because you paid taxes in Italy?
Hopefully nothing. Hopefully. So
hopefully you owe the US nothing?
Hopefully. So because your Italian taxes are going to be, I'm sorry to tell you, so much higher than what you would have owed on the same money in the US. You pay your Italian taxes, and then in June. Then you have until October, to get your mind around the idea that I have to file American taxes. I've just done all this in Italy. Now I have to do this again. So in October, you do your American taxes, your returns as usual, and then you attach a form. It's one or another depending on your circumstances. Don't quote me, but I think it's either a 1116 or a 2555. Please don't quote me. But depending on what your financial situation, that's how you show what you have paid in Italy, and it should zero out most, if not all, of your U.S. taxes. There's a treaty between the countries. That's not true. For example, my best friend who used to live in China did not have this treaty. So there's a treaty between the U.S. and Italy where you're not going to be double taxed on the same dollars or euros earned, but only if it's in the same income category. So that's true for wages, but it's not true. Please don't quote me, and it could change tomorrow. But like capital gains, for example, you would, on a sale of a house, that tax category doesn't exist here, I don't think, but it does in the States. So that category is not zeroed out. So if you sell a home and you get a profit, you would now have to pay taxes on that in America, even though you're not a resident there anymore. I'm not a CPA or a commercialista. So, this is what I have understood from going through it myself and from reading a lot. But, some people, you would find yourselves owing something to the U.S. depending on the category of your income.
Just to clarify one little point, and then I want to go back to some more macro issues. You're saying if you sold a house in Italy and had capital gains, you wouldn't owe Italy anything in terms of taxation on those capital gains, but you would have to pay the U.S.
You do
your earnings on a sale of a property in Italy?
Yeah, for sure you have to pay in the U.S. My doubt is whether or not you have to also pay here. I think not. I think that is the whole reason that you owe taxes in the States, is because you're not being double taxed in the same category of income like you would be with wages. And nobody has to take my word for it. Everybody should go Google Boris Johnson, U.S. citizen, Boris Johnson, capital gains, home, whatever category. But Boris Johnson, the former prime minister, was a U.S. citizen from birth because his parents were working there, and he was born, and then moved back to the U.K. when he was, I think, 5, and never lived there again, but retained his U.S. citizenship. Sold his mansion in London, thought nothing of it, and then got a big tax bill from Uncle Sam. And he fought it, and he fought it, and he fought it, and he went on television saying, I'm not going to pay a dime, and over my dead body. And guess what? He ended up paying it. And after he paid it, he renounced his U.S. citizenship.
Pronounced U.S. citizenship.
That's how.
I mean, who wouldn't after something so enraging?
Yes, a lot of people, for me, it would be like slightly less enraging because I lived in the U.S. my whole life. I still go there a lot. Maybe one day I'll live there again. But Boris Johnson, he's like,
Yes.
I've never even I left before kindergarten, and he had to pay some huge because it was a big house.
Yes. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about. So, number one, what if you go ahead and pay your U.S. taxes first in April, and then share that with Italy in June? And can you owe less in taxation by doing it in that order?
No, you can't. And again, I'm not a professional, but I had the same question, when I started paying taxes here many years ago. But no, because you owe where you are a resident. You are a tax resident in Italy. You owe here. You don't owe there, but you do owe here. And so if you do that, like, let's say you do that by accident, like June comes around and your accountant says, oh, you owe X amount of money. And you think, well, wait a minute, I just paid my U.S. taxes. I'm just going to use round numbers. Your Italian accountant says you have to pay $10,000. And you think, well, I just paid $5,000 to the U.S. Well, sorry, you got to pay $10,000 here and then try to get a refund in the U.S. You could get it back.
So always better to ask for an extension in the U.S., settle up with Italy, and then apply what you paid to Italy to your U.S. obligations.
Yeah, which I have not bought or sold any houses. I don't own. Another situation was my American friend living here had retained a home, I think in Pittsburgh, and was renting it out in the U.S. That rental income, I think she had to pay you. I can't remember. But there's certain categories of income that you pay here, that you pay there. But your wages, so any income you have from working, interest and dividends on your investments are taxed here. And then those are zeroed out in the States. I haven't owed any money to the States in a long time because I have not that many different categories. I don't.
Right, and you're paying to Italy.
Why,
if there's a tax agreement, do you have any sense of why does this operate like a one-way street? Like the U.S. will take into account what you paid in Italy, but is Italy just like, I can't figure that out, so you still owe X? Too much, too complicated.
It's not that they can't figure it out.
It's
not that they can't figure it out. Like you owe here. You owe all of your taxes where you're a tax resident. And the reverse would also be true.
But under this tax agreement, don't they have to make that, because you're a resident? Okay, so you're saying if an Italian person born in Italy moves to the U.S., they would request an extension in Italy, file in the U.S., and then they would be able to share with Italy, hey, I'm a resident in the U.S., I paid the U.S., now give me a break on my Italian taxes. But it's because you're a resident in Italy that the country giving the break has to be the place where you are not a resident?
I'm sorry to tell anyone this who's listening, but only America, and as far as I know, Eritrea, country in Africa, tax their citizens.
But that comes up a lot.
Tax their citizens who live abroad. So no, an Italian person living in Florida or living in New York does not have to pay any Italian taxes ever, no matter where they're, you, Lauren, are an Italian citizen living in North Carolina. You are not paying Italian taxes, and you're not cheating. You're not evading anything.
That's right.
That's fine. America is extremely unique in how it taxes its U.S. citizens like me. It's long arms. It taxes its citizens living all around the world. And that's why I, as a U.S. citizen here, pay taxes to Italy as I should. As I said, I'm using their streets. I'm driving on their streets. I'm, using their emergency services. I'm definitely using their health care. We're going to talk about that, I'm sure. My children are using the free health care, et cetera, et cetera. If they go to university here, it's paid for by all of our taxes. College is free here. So as I should, I live here. I use their services. I pay taxes here. It's the U.S. that does what, I don't want to say unfair, not I mean, it's I have less of an I have a little bit less of an objection to it because I lived there for a long time, and I could see myself going back one day. But somebody like Boris Johnson, somebody like there's so much It's just very, very unusual. It's very unusual that the U.S. makes its citizens who live abroad continue to pay taxes to the U.S. Somebody had a conversation with a relative recently who said, but I think that's fair. If you were, abroad and if there were a tsunami or something, you would be calling like the U.S. government to get you out. I just have made peace with that. As I've said, at least in my specific situation, I don't think I have owed U.S. taxes ever since I have lived here because my categories are pretty narrow. But if I ever bought a house and then sold it, that might be different.
So, Liz, I have one sort of, because, this is kind of who I am kind of question. So, as an American living in Italy and earning income from a U.S. source, if you just didn't pay, how are they going to know what you're making? How is Italy going to know what you're making and what you owe?
I don't know. I don't want to know. I'm not, I don't want to risk that. I would not risk that. Because of the treaty, I think that they can communicate with each other. The Italian IRS, which is called something else, and the US IRS can communicate with each other if they want to. It's probably, I'm just guessing, as random as like an audit that you might have in the US if you're just a US person living in the US, that you might get randomly audited, or maybe some red flag would pop up. And, if you're getting paid like, a W-2 is going to be easy, but if you're getting paid, if you've got multiple sources or you're doing things, how would they know if you don't tell the IRS? If they don't, how do they know about your gambling winnings, or like you sold your grandmother's silverware? How would they know? Maybe not, but if you get audited,
okay, we can leave it there. Yeah. We can let the audience gather their own, assess your own risk level, and govern yourself accordingly based on, how would the Italians know about my overseas income? For example, it's not necessarily just having a codice fiscale. That can be had by somebody that's not a resident in Italy. So that doesn't necessarily trigger some sort of tax investigation, etc. All right. So let's say you've got yourself settled there in Italy. You're working. You figured out taxes. You've got your commercialista. You feel like, okay, good. I've got my apartment. I'm paying my taxes. Everything is good. But I would like to go to the doctor. Now, I've been here like 6 months, a year, and I haven't gone to the dentist. I haven't seen a doctor. I haven't really had any emergencies, in this hypothetical situation. But you're thinking like, okay, yeah, I need my teeth cleaned, and I should probably have my annual physical. What's the first step somebody needs to take in order to start those relationships with physicians that are not emergency based?
You have some options here in Italy. There are parallel systems. There is the free system, which is kind of like Medicare for all. And it runs parallel to a private system, which really resembles what we're used to in the States, except much, much cheaper. So I would recommend to anyone who can afford it to go ahead and get private health insurance. It's still, much, much cheaper than you would ever dream of in the States. And in fact, just paying privately out of pocket is infinitely cheaper than it would be in the United States. Some people choose to do that and not get insurance because even an operation will cost you just a fraction of what you would dream of. I think the other day we were talking, I got a blood test that I paid for out of pocket for €8 or something. So,
right. Something ridiculous. Now, is private insurance available to citizens and non-citizens?
My husband has insurance through his job. So a private insurance through he's Italian. He has an Italian job, and they offer private insurance as a benefit, just like your job in the U.S. might offer it as a benefit. But also there is expat insurance that you can buy. My best friend here has that. Used it to give birth in a private hospital. It was accepted. I don't know what she pays, but I am certain it is much less than you would pay, in the U.S. because they have to reimburse a provider here who's charging a fraction of what a provider would charge in the States. The public
insurance, though, only available to citizens.
No.
Private insurance can be purchased by non-citizens.
So public is not insurance. It's just free health care. It's just like
public health care, right?
No, not only to citizens. I have it too. You have to be a resident. So a citizen or non-citizen resident. In fact, you as an Italian citizen, non-resident, can't get it. So because you're
Right.
a
Residency
resident in the
triggers
US.
access to the healthcare system.
Residency. So residency. And for residency in the States, it's like, I'm a resident of Tennessee because I say I am. Here it's very formal.
Right.
You have to go to City Hall and register yourself. They come to your house and check to see that you actually live there. They came and checked to see if I was here.
Okay, they did that.
Okay. Yep.
Even in Rome, even in Rome. I always think like in a big city, most of the time they don't bother to send out a police officer to do these checks because they have too much to do.
They came, they rang the buzzer. My husband answered and they said, is, Elizabeth Knight there in the house? And he said, yeah, she's up here with the baby. Do you want to come up? And they said, no, it's okay. No, we'll just write down that she's here. But if he had been bluffing, that would have been he would have busted, so I guess they believed that he wasn't bluffing, and he wasn't. But they do really come. So then once you have your residency formalized, you can then get on the Italian healthcare. You get a national healthcare card. You trot down to the healthcare office of your neighborhood. It's like a zone.
Is that in the comune?
It's even less than your comune. It's your little quartiere, your neighborhood, your municipio, and you present your residency documents, etc. Then they say, okay, they give you at least in Rome, they give you a paper sort of temporary card, and then your plastic card comes in the mail. Also, in that moment, they assign you a doctor. This is crazy for an American person. Like, they assign you a doctor, and this is your what we would call like a primary care doctor. Here they call it a medico di base, your base doctor, medico di base. And that's where you go for your bad cough, your everyday things. And then he or she can refer you to a specialist.
How do you make an appointment with your medico di base?
Walk in. It's walk in.
Okay, you don't have to make an appointment. You can just go in. There's no wait. You don't have to call ahead. You just show up.
We do call ahead. You don't have to. We call ahead to be like, also because we kind of made friends with the lady at the front desk. That's also so Italian. You're like buddy with like so she will like squeeze us in, but maybe she and my husband are fans of the same soccer team. So then she will bend over backwards for us. Yes. So like we'll call ahead and be like, is it swamped? Is it, are there tons of people there? Or what time should we come in where there's going to be like less people? So you can kind of call ahead, but you can also just walk in. The thing is that the hours are reduced compared to what I think we're used to, like I'm going to see my doctor at 7 p.m. tonight, and in the States, and here it's like, maybe from 9 to 1 or something, but yeah, but it's still walk-in. And, recently I was home and one of my parents had bronchitis or something and was like calling the doctor, and there was just nothing available. The advice was just keep taking over the counter stuff. And if you turn blue, go to the emergency room. I he could have just walked in and been seen. So,
so walk in might be limited hours. And if that person is out sick themselves, is there a replacement doctor, or you're just told, no, come back tomorrow?
Yeah, they go on vacation and there's a replacement doctor, a substitute they're called, and they're there and they're great.
And it's no problem if that person isn't listed on your tessera sanitaria, your healthcare card.
They're substituting for Dr. So-and-so. And you get, you can request when you go to the ASL office, that's the National Healthcare Office for your neighborhood. You can say if there's a specific one you want, and if he or she has some availability, you'll get him or her. And so I got the one that my husband was already going to, and that his parents already go to. So we're all at the same family doctor. Like,
how very Italian is that as well?
It is very Italian.
The family doctor for multiple generations.
Yeah. But obviously, we don't want to go, to two different places, and far-flung corners of the. So that, but if there had been someone else, if I'd been like, no, I met this doctor and she's great and I'm going to go to her. She's got availability, I could go to her too. So it's not like you have to just take whoever. But it's also, if you don't know anybody, then you're fine to take whoever.
Right. Then you're assigned a
Yeah.
physician. Now, you also have the private insurance
Mhm.
through your husband's
Mhm.
employer.
Mhm.
And what do you see as the big benefits that make private insurance preferable to the universal healthcare system, I'm going to call it?
Mhm.
And are there things that the universal healthcare system does better than the private side?
What the universal healthcare system does better is it's free. Obviously, I know that was not.
Okay.
So you're not going to get a bill at all. And in the private one, you will. And even if you have insurance like we have, it's you have deductibles and copays. They're just so small. We're talking like 15
Right.
euros. Is your
Right.
copay for
A
some
blood test,
huge.
you owe 8
Yeah,
euros.
exactly.
Yes.
And the deductible, I don't even know. It's just also reduced. So you do have to pay, something. But the difference in care is the public is totally fine and totally good. We use both, especially for our kids. We have a private pediatrician who does the sort of well child checkups every 6 months or whatever schedule they're on. But for like a bad cough or cold or pink eye or something, we take them to the free. Americans like to say it's not free, it's the taxes, but so I'm just saying
Right.
free
But
as shorthand. We
sure.
go to the free pediatrician for just stuff like that. So the public one is totally fine. The difference is really if you are giving birth, like I've done twice, if you are having an operation or something like that, in the private system, you will get a private room, with a TV and good food. And, I had a view of like a courtyard with palm trees and a balcony, when I was in recovery after my kids were born. In a public hospital, you'll have a roommate. You'll be sharing about.
Are we saying are they operating in different facilities? Like if
Yes.
you identify a certain
Good
hospital
question.
in Rome, that's going to be exclusively
Good
universal
question.
healthcare doctors, and then their private hospitals have the private physicians.
Great question, Lauren. Great question. Because my dear friend was saying that his parents, who live in a rural part of Texas, have a problem finding a provider who accept Medicare. Like the providers are not accepting Medicare. You have to find. Here, that is not a problem because it's different brick and mortar. It's a private hospital. You can pay for with insurance. You can pay out of pocket if you don't have insurance. And then there are public hospitals. So where you go, there's no like they don't accept me or whatever because that's all there is. You go and then you don't get a bill. But moms who give birth in a public hospital are going to be totally fine. The healthcare is fine. The outcomes are great. But you're going to have a roommate.
In terms of the physicians,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there are physicians that are exclusively universal healthcare system and physicians that are exclusively in the private system.
You might have somebody who works in two different places.
Both.
Both. Like sometimes,
Okay, so it's not as though when you're coming up in your career as a physician, you make this choice and you might find that they have different credentials or something like that. But no, there is overlap.
Yeah,
they might be the medico de base for a certain municipio, and then at the same time, they can be hired privately.
And when I had a lot of preconceived notions when I first came here and started, needing to go to the doctor, et cetera. And I think I said to somebody like, why would you, if you're graduating with a degree in medicine, why would you pick, being a public doctor over a private doctor when, the private hospitals have like gazebos and swans, and the public hospitals look a little dated, like they could use a little sprucing up, etc. And the person responded to me, "Oh, the public doctors are paid really well. There's a lot of with our taxes, they're paid well. They're not bottom of the barrel like." The lowest grades or the worst students of the class. No, and you get a lot of vacation, etc. So there are a lot of reasons that a doctor might prefer to work in the public system over the private system. And so in my experience, the public care is great. It's just less. My son had to spend the night in he got some stitches, whatever, at the hospital. And, we had a roommate. Nobody got any sleep. The doctor for the roommate was coming in and out at all hours. There was a mom who was on the phone at all hours. I was like, but, we didn't get a bill for that.
Now, I think there's a perception that when in a country that offers universal healthcare, as I keep calling
Mhm.
it, that there are some services for which you might wait an eternity. Is that true? Are there things where it's like, well, I need this, let's call it an elective surgery, where it's not like I have bronchitis, I'm not going to have this 6 months from now, but let's say I don't know, I don't have a fantastic example on hand,
No, I know.
but something that doesn't have to happen today. Do you find that yes, there can be services where if you're using the public system, yes, they'll tell you we can't get to you for 6 months, 8 months, whatever, or is that a myth?
I have heard the same thing. I have not myself had that problem because we have private insurance and we just call and say, "Hi, I want a knee replacement," and we'll just get it whenever we want. But I have heard the same thing. I've heard, but I'm giving you a lot of kind of hearsay now. But a friend whose mom had to wait 18 months for bunion surgery because they didn't consider it, urgent. Um, so I've also heard, but again, this is not my personal experience, that they try to mitigate that by, if you have a medico de base who prescribes for you a specialist service, I mean, maybe not elective, literally like a nose job, but prescribes for you, bunion surgery. If you find that you cannot seem to schedule it for a long time in the public system, again, this is just what people have told me, you can go to a private hospital and somehow demonstrate, prove that you have a prescription for this, and the next available appointment is not till next year, that you can get it done at the private hospital for free. I mean, for free, I keep doing that, for free. So I guess then I suppose that what then happens behind the scenes would be that the private hospital would bill Medicare. It's not called Medicare, but so, we provided this service to someone and that person didn't pay us personally. So we're going to ask the government to reimburse us. You don't care. You got your bunion surgery, so you don't care.
Right.
But,
and the private healthcare system got paid.
The private health. And so what happens in like a rural community? I mean, I live in Rome. What happens in the deep, dark, jungles of Calabria? It's probably rough. But that's probably also the same, for my friend whose parents live in the middle of nowhere, East Texas too. They have to drive to Dallas, So I really don't have anything bad to say about the Italian healthcare here. And I promise you, before I started using it, had a lot of just preconceived notions and fear about the quality, about what the quality was going to be. Yeah. But I really do recommend that everybody get private insurance. I'm not out here saying just use the national health care like there's no tomorrow. Like, get the private insurance. You will not be disappointed. And it just doesn't cost like what it costs in the States. It's a fraction.
Yeah. Last question in this category. Is the same true of prescription medications? Are they far less expensive than in the US?
They're far less expensive than in the US. Far less expensive.
Okay.
I mean, 50 pills of Synthroid, which a lot of people take in the US for thyroid. 50 pills is like €3.50. And that's without even insurance. That's just out of pocket. That's not what I pay after insurance. That's just out of pocket. But You know what costs more? Over-the-counter medicine. So your Tylenol, your like Mucinex, your Robitussin. So if you want to bring some of that from the States in your suitcase, that's probably a good idea.
And do you think that might be because in the pharmacies there, the pharmacist kind of serves as a healthcare provider in a way, and like you can talk to that person about, you can skip the doctor entirely and say, I've got this nagging cough, what's going on? And they might solve the problem for you and give you what you need right there, and you don't have to go into the doctor at all.
Yes, sometimes for sure. So they can give you antibiotics if they're convinced, that you, maybe not like around 10 days worth or something, but if you've got like a UTI, just for example, and it's like a 1-day antibiotic, they can give you that. My thyroid medication, which I've been taking for 25 years, I don't ever present a prescription for that. I just tell them I need, 125 micrograms, whatever that, and they just give it to me. They have they have more authority, I think, than a pharmacist does in the U.S. I don't think, I know. And there's also just kind of more trust. I mean, how do they know I'm not selling it out of the back of my car, But they just do it. They just give it to me.
They just assume, right? So they stop assuming the worst in everybody and assume everybody's just acting like a normal human.
Yeah, and
interesting. Right. Okay, so you've got yourself in your apartment in Rome. No, I don't mean you, but in kind of our example that we've been following in the podcast, you've got yourself set up, you've got your citizenship, you've got yourself an apartment, you've got your work set, and your taxes are all in order. Now you've gone to the doctor, and now you know how to do that in any scenario. And now, as life always does, or not always, but often does, now kids arrive on the scene. And tell us about that. Well, let's start with, I guess what I want to most talk about is when they get to be school age. I mean, I think we've kind of covered that, like, yes, the healthcare element of bringing them into the world is going to be just fine. Whether you go public, whether you go private, it's going to be just fine. And so will their wellness visits, emergency care, all of that. And then they get to be school age. And so what did an American like you, what are you doing with your school age children now in terms of both at the preschool level and when they get to the equivalent of kindergarten? How do you make those decisions? What are the options available?
Okay, yeah. So I have a son in kindergarten. They don't call it that here, but the equivalent of kindergarten, because next year is the first grade. And my other one is in a preschool class. He just turned 4. You have in a city like Rome, I mean, this might not be true if you live in the countryside, of Tuscany or whatever, but in a city like Rome, your choices are Italian public school, Italian private school, which is like if you sent your child to a private school in the US, or a private international school, which is only in English. These are only in English.
All of them?
Yeah.
The international schools are always in English?
The private international schools are English language schools. And, the teachers are going to be from the US, from the UK, from Australia. You might have some Italian teachers, but they're going to be Italians who speak perfect English and because the instruction's in English. Those schools are very expensive. You can just Google, English language international school in Rome and find it. Some people can afford that, no problem. Some people, even if they can't afford it, would not just want to consider that. Yeah, would not want to pay that. I will tell you what we went with. We sort of did the Goldilocks approach and went with the middle one, which is the Italian private school. It costs so much less than an American private school. I won't get into specifics, but I can tell you the year is 2026, and the school costs less than the private school that I went to a really long time ago. I won't say how many years ago. A really long time ago. So it costs so much less than a U.S. private school. But I chose it. I wanted it. My husband would have been fine with an Italian public school. He's a product of Italian public schools. But I wanted a school that had a ton of English instruction. It's important to me that my kids speak English as well as they speak Italian. And so far they do.
Do all Italian private schools incorporate English education?
Yeah, private and public does too, but not until later, like I think maybe 3rd grade or something. And then it'll be like 1 hour a week. And the teacher will be Italian. And so we'll have an accent. And, I get this is all hearsay again, but I will never forget the story of an American mom had a kid in school here, and the English teacher pronounced purple purple.
Oh,
yeah. So,
And what is the amount of English teaching going on in Italian private school that's not international?
So I looked for one specifically that had a lot of English. I don't know about other ones, but I found this one where they started English with a native speaker starting in the first year that they went, which is when they were 2.5. So starting in preschool, they had English almost every day, maybe 4 days a week. The gal came in. I love her. she's from Scotland, and spent an hour with them. And
that's an added challenge to learning English right there.
She doesn't have a Scottish accent, which we joked about. She sounds English.
Okay.
She does not sound like Braveheart or whatever, like,
Okay.
the janitor in The Simpsons. It's not like that. So was it the janitor?
I don't know, but I love that reference.
It's been a while. So I love her. So she, starting from when they were 2, would come in like about an hour a day. And then in a couple of years, they start having math and science in English also. So in addition to their English class, and they're going to start having theater or drama in English. So also math and science. So they're going to end up having about half the day in English, and then also take Spanish as a third language. So I really like that. The other thing I really liked about this particular school is that there's a sports center and like an indoor pool, so they can do all their sports there. If you are considering sending your child to an Italian school, there's pros and cons. They're not going to have sports at school. You have to find that somewhere else, sort of like if you did it at the Y when you were a kid, like I did basketball at the Y. There just isn't, I guess it's just not part of there's not the real estate, in Rome, all the schools are like in urban buildings, and there's no fields or pools or tennis courts. This school has attached to it on campus a sports center, which is also open to kids from other schools. So after school, right there on campus, we just cross the little courtyard, and they have swimming, and in the future they'll have whatever else they want to do, basketball, tennis, whatever else they want to do is all right there. Very rare in Rome. Usually your kid goes to school, and then you are like a, chauffeur going all over town to their different activities, and they have it all there. So that school for me was a no-brainer.
On the sports note, so I have this vision of like life for children in Italy and Europe in general that is like, well, there aren't any sports teams for kids. It's like somehow miraculously you end up on the soccer national team I have no idea how anybody gets on that, but otherwise it's like, well, no, there's no swim team. There's no, like, they don't play volleyball. They don't know how to do these things. They don't, let alone like, lacrosse field. Like this is now we're like in, like, they haven't even heard of it. Are there sports teams for kids? So for, I guess I think about my daughter who's 4, who is going to be on the neighborhood swim team this summer. Is that even a thing? Or if you make this move to Europe, it's like, well, no, but you can hang out in the city park.
No, it's a thing for sure. You have to find it. Like I said, our school has that attached, and so they can do all of that there. That school has like a...
And are there teams?
Yeah.
Or it's just like,
so it's like a
or
league.
You can come swimming in this pool if you want to, but there's no team.
No, there is. So it's like a league. And so if you, are on the swim team, it's just not, you don't swim for your school. Like for me, my school was USN. You're not on like the USN swim team. You're on the, Centro Santa Maria swim team, which is your sports complex. And you compete, against other sports complex teams. Those private international schools I talked about with the gazebos and ice sculptures and
they got sports teams coming out their ears.
They play each other. That would more resemble the high school experience that maybe a lot of us have, where USN is playing Jackson High, this afternoon in volleyball. But I said to my husband early on, I was like, if our kids, want to play soccer, now they have that school, but how would where's the team? Like, where do you, said you would just sign up for your neighborhood, association, and that's your team. And the association talks to other associations and they play against each other. But check out like Olympic medals. There are a lot of teams like volleyball and obviously soccer, although
sure,
not in the World Cup this year.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at some of those Italian teams, it's like, well, you got everybody from the U.S., but good on you, Italian baseball
team.
They're
from everywhere, and in the pro sports, they're from everywhere. But obviously, the Olympic teams, you've got to be like an Italian citizen. But
right. But even some of those are like. Not exactly homegrown. Right.
Yeah, there was a guy on the Italian
I think it's something that they should think about. Like, hey, do you want to be able to field, as you're cracking down on the Italian citizenship laws, do you want to be able to field these Olympic and professional teams later down the road, particularly the Olympic teams. All right. So, okay, a couple questions have come up in my mind there. So, like, do you feel like there's a sense of neighborhood where you feel like if you had sent your child to the public school in the neighborhood, do you feel like, yeah, they all know each other, like they live on the same block and they go to the same school? Or is it like, well, no, we didn't really know who else was going to the school until we got there on the first day and realized, okay, actually we do know, we've seen a couple of you around.
My husband really wanted them to go to the neighborhood public school, which he also went to, the same school. We live in the neighborhood where he was born and raised. That's very Italian, The reason was, I don't think he said anything about the academics, or I'm sure he thinks it's fine, but that was not the reason. The reason was because then all your friends are in your neighborhood and you can just sort of cross the street and be at your friend's house. And at his age, his best friends are still people that he went to school with who still live in this neighborhood that's so different from us. We all are like moving and then my friend, she moved to California in the 6th grade but we're still Facebook friends. Everybody is still here. And maybe not everybody, but his group of friends, they've all been friends since like preschool. And the school that we go to is only about a 20-minute drive away, which from my experience is nothing. We had kids at my school who were coming from like farms from, an hour away. And he was concerned that the kids that are at the school are all going to be living in all like corners of Rome and you'll just never get to hang out with your friends. And
are you finding that to be true?
There's a birthday party.
I know your boys are young. Your boys are young, so
there's a birthday party every weekend, if not 2 or 3
here, there, everywhere.
So we are seeing all of the little playmates and friends every weekend at birthday parties. When they're teenagers, is it going to be like, give me the car keys to drive, an hour away to go to my friend's house for dinner? I don't know. We'll see. But even if that happened, it would resemble my experience, in high school with friends who are living all over
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Are there differences in terms of class size, public school versus Italian private school?
It's what you're thinking. Yeah, so my kids...
Public school is bigger. They've got to accommodate everybody that lives in the jurisdiction.
Yeah, in fact, that confuses me too. I am not even sure how you pick a public school because my understanding is you don't even have to live near that school. So it's not like you're zoned for a school like in the States. I don't get it. I have asked my husband to explain it to me, especially as we were thinking about where our kids were going to go to school. I was like, so I could go to a public school really far away? His answer was something like, but why would you want to go to a school that's far away? I'm like, yeah, but I didn't ask. I asked if I wanted to.
I didn't ask that.
Yeah.
Right. Just can I do it is the question.
Like, he, I think, had a cousin who went to some school by the Trevi Fountain, but is from this neighborhood. I kind of think you just kind of sign up, and if there's a spot, there's a spot. Don't quote me. But yes, I don't have personal experience, but I have one of my best friends taught in a public school and is now in a private school, an Italian girl, that the classes are much bigger with fewer teachers. There's like nothing on the walls. So nothing sort of stimulating, there might be a map. And then as you get older into high school, you stay, this is minutia. This is not maybe a big deal to some people, but you stay with the same 30 kids all day from like 8 to 3 or 4, whatever it is. And there's no switching classrooms and switching teachers depending on like, when we were kids, we had advanced class, like baby math, advanced math. I never took calculus. My sister took calculus. I did, I was in AP history, but maybe you weren't in AP history. There are all these different levels, but everybody is in the same class, and there's no room for somebody who is more, I don't want to say better or worse, but more, naturally
better
inclined versus someone else. Yeah. So that one, we're only in preschool, but I I don't know how that's going to be at our private school, but to me, that's sort of like, I don't love that.
So they are not, even in the private school, they are not going to,
I'm not sure.
either through self-identification or otherwise, separate high achievers from other.
Yeah. I am not sure how it's going to go. It might be one of those things I'm just going to have to accept.
Suck it up.
But I don't love that.
Right.
I don't love that. Also,
do they track differently in terms of what happens to you after high school in terms of university acceptance? Does the public school track versus the private school track? Is that different in the same way that it can be different here in the U.S.?
I don't think anybody
remains to be seen.
Struck of that. You know, in my high school, it's like every year, it's like, here's the colleges where the class of 2026 is going. And in my high school yearbook, it listed where everybody was going to college, you know. But I don't know how anybody would even know. It doesn't seem to be followed. It doesn't, that no one is taking down that information. It does not appear.
Maybe there's something beautiful about that, in the sense that you don't think about decisions about children's preschool and kindergarten years. You're not factoring in, well, how will this affect their college admission?
There's a lot.
You know, there's something nice about enjoying the moment for what it is, and not thinking about, well, what will this be in 15 years?
Right. And I in about in about 12 years, I'm going to really start thinking about universities and such. But I still am not sure on how a kid gets into a university or doesn't. There's no SATs, you know, there's no like standardized tests. Like, I don't get it. And my understanding is that certain departments at universities have more difficult, like, you'll have if you want to study law at the University of Rome, there's going to be a difficult entrance exam, but not if you want to study literature, you know. So that will unfold for me and my family. But there's just, in that way, it's really different. Again, no SATs, no, you're not, you know, ranked, I don't think. One thing I should say is that high schools have different, I said, you know, there's no room for people who are particularly interested in or naturally inclined for one subject over another. But starting in the first year of high school, the 9th grade, and high school is 5 years, by the way, so you're 19 when you graduate. But starting in, you know, the equivalent of the 9th grade, you are at a classical high school, a scientific high school, a linguistic high school, an artistic high school, or then something that's really niche, like a, you know, technical school for like hotel restaurant management kind of thing. Yeah. So you have to kind of choose when you're 14 if you're going to go to a scientific high school, a classical high school, a linguistic high school, et cetera, et cetera.
That's if you're in the public system?
And private. And private.
And private. So you will face this decision even with the school that you've chosen. They will then have to choose a high school.
Yes.
That is different, not necessarily associated with the school that they've come up through.
The school where they go happens to offer a classical track, a scientific track, or something like a biomedical track, which is even more niche, more specific. If they wanted to do a linguistic high school, they'd have to go somewhere else. Most schools are only one thing or another. Like, this is just a classical high school or a scientific high school. Like I said, this school has 2 different high schools in the same building, 2 or maybe 3 biomedical. But if they wanted to do an artistic high school, they'd have to leave and go somewhere else. I think it's kind of strange to know when you're 14, you know, whether you are going to have this path in life or other. There is like, even if you do the classical high school, it's not just Latin and Greek, you know, you do take some math and science, but there's also like a lot of Latin and Greek, you know, so, you know, there, you do take some classes are, you know, overlapped or in common, but it's like having a major.
Yeah. All right. Last question. How many I'm not going to say just expats, but international, in some form or fashion, students are you finding are at the school that your boys go to, and in a private Italian school where in your household, you have one American parent, one Italian parent. How many other families would you say have something that is something other than two Italy born and raised parents?
A handful. In my 4-year-old class, there are, I think, only like 2. In my 6-year-old class, there's probably like 7 or 8 out of 25 who have at least one foreign parent. None of them are from the U.S. None of them are even English speakers. So nobody else from the States or Canada or Australia or whatever. But I think I heard of the school the first time because of a Canadian friend here whose daughter she's way up in middle school now. But so there are other English-speaking expat people who send their kids to that school. But there's also, in my son's class, I think there are 2 Chinese kids, a Russian, a Romanian, a Korean, so from all over the place. But the language of instruction is in Italian with, at this age, an hour a day. The English teacher comes in and, sings Old MacDonald or whatever. And, that's hopefully going to get a little more challenging. But
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fantastic. Liz, is there anything we didn't touch on that you think, oh, no, the audience needs to know this, whether you think to ask the question, Lauren, or not?
I did want to say one more thing about Italian healthcare, because I said I don't have any complaints. I will say sometimes I think the pendulum swings too far into preventative and thorough. I think maybe sometimes in the States we're guilty of thinking that, national healthcare socialized medicine would be really bare bones, like minimum. And I really think it swings way too far. I shouldn't say way too far, better safe than sorry. It swings pretty far towards too much testing and surveillance. And so, you go in with a toothache and all of a sudden you're getting a MRI. I don't want to invade anyone's privacy, but people that are close to me who have had really long stays in the hospital for kind of a minor surgery, in the States, you'd go home the next day and, they stay in the hospital for 2.5 weeks. I ask why.
Oh my God.
Why are they still there?
I'd be busting out in my, I'd have my whatever. I'd have my gown on and say, I'm out of here.
And this is a true story. It was somebody close to me had a hip replacement and ended up they stayed for something like 19 days in recovery. It sounds like I'm making that up. In 19 days. And I was like, why? And the answer was, well, because they have to do all of this, physical therapy. You can't expect somebody to go home and then drive to physical therapy, if they have just had a hip replacement.
Right. Then something where you may not be able to drive.
I was like, but people just want to go home. People want to be home. They don't want to be in the little, but right. Just like sometimes when I go to the doctor, I'm so grateful that I'm going to see a doctor. It's not like when I was home and, this person was coughing his head off and couldn't get the doctor to see him. On the other hand, it's like, oh my gosh, I have a cough. I need to go to the doctor. But I feel like if I do, they're going to refer me to, a CAT scan or something.
Right. Have my kidneys analyzed.
Yeah. When I was pregnant, the doctor was so strict about, my blood sugar was totally in normal range, even for Italians, the normal range. They give you the normal range, but she wanted it even lower, So I think if anything, they're too cautious, or there's so much oversight, but it's just a different way of thinking. They really think about it as preventative medicine and finding things.
And they have a longer life expectancy than we do in the U.S.
A lot longer.
Maybe there's something to be said for that.
And one day I was on a mission to prove to, I guess it was my husband, that there's more skin cancer and lung cancer here because there's still a lot of smoking and baking in the sun. There still is. And it was the opposite. Like, even though, we smoke way less in the States and we put on all the sunscreen, they've still got less cancer of the skin and of the lungs. I conclude it just has to be maybe better, medical care, preventative care, but also genetics, you said that, but also, just healthier food. I think it cures a lot of ills. I'm still wearing my sunscreen. I'm wearing it even now.
Well, some things never change. I guess it's just ingrained in us.
Mhm.
Well, listen, Liz, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
more than informative. I think we covered some really important topics for somebody that's considering making this move to Italy, Europe, whatever it is. Thank you. I love you, dear.
You're
Thank you so
welcome. I
much.
love you. And really, don't everything. If somebody is watching this 6 months after we've recorded it, something will have changed. Something will have changed.
Yes.
It changes every day. I mean, just the citizenship laws. It's so, dynamic.
Right.
And so
it's day to day.
Everything needs to be Googled. Definitely line up a local, expert who can tell you what the tax rules are today, not what they were 6 months ago. Today. How do you get your health card today? Not 6 months ago when the rules were different, but it just changes all the time. But hopefully you'll
Hopefully this foundation gives them a starting point of maybe what to expect in general, but check out, what is current when you go to make this move.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, my dear. This has been fantastic.
I can't wait to see
You're
you next time
You're welcome. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much. Bye. Ciao.
Thanks, Liz. That was fantastic. Stay tuned next time, guys, for our next edition of Your Italian Podcast. And in the meantime, check us out on Thursday. We have an aperitivo scheduled this week where we will be discussing the latest updates out of the Italian courts and how they affect Italian citizenship law. And most importantly, stay tuned to us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, under Your Italian Passport for all the latest. See you soon.